Hey, everybody. So thank you for taking the time out and hopping on with me live tonight. Um, I have with me my guest, Samantha Glover. Me and Samantha actually met on LinkedIn through a mutual friend of ours, Mr. Russ Johns. If you follow him, man, he's a great guy. I'm really appreciative of everything that he's done, helping me trying to set up my own live stream. But I enjoy it. I started doing it, and I just wanted to put myself out there and try my hand at broadcasting a little bit. It's been a real learning experience. I can tell you that, and I more than anything hope that as I keep doing more and more of these shows, I can get a little bit better. So that's why I'm doing a lot of these episodes, as many as I can to get them as many under my belt. So without further ado, let me introduce Samantha. Let me see. Hey, Samantha, are you there?
Oh, hey. Sorry, my
Hey,
mic was muted.
that's okay. That's okay. That's the thing about live streaming. You things like that happen, and you just got to keep moving on, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Samantha, the reason I wanted to ask you on because you're a very interesting person. When we first met, uh, your story was really touching to me. I know that you've went through a lot, and for those who don't know, Samantha had she was homeless for how long were you? Well, I'll let you tell a little bit more. I'm sorry. Let me let you tell your story a little bit better. If you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the crowd.
Sure. I would like to call myself like, I guess I'm an artist. I love to be able to create different things, and just to be able to express myself through art. I would say that was maybe the most simplest way of describing describing myself, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing that what interests me that you're a mathematician, or I believe you've called it what a data scientist. Is that the correct term?
Well, technically, data scientists, or the term data science is a new term, but the study of data or the science of data were always done by mathematicians.
Okay.
So, so that's just like a modern term, but it's not too modern. I know that the term originated from LinkedIn, so it's less than a decade old, but technically, mathematicians were the original or computer programmers were the original people that studied data. But now, in the past few years, maybe the past 3 years, people have been calling it, data science or data scientists rather.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one of the things I found interesting. And then when I started doing a little bit more research uh, and following you, I learned that you not only did, you know, analytics, you also were a musician and that you could play different different instruments. I think what I'd read was you can play what your first was what the violin. Is that
Hmm.
what it was?
Yeah,
So how long?
that was my first instrument.
How did you pick up learning to play the violin? Because I played of all things a French horn, but that was because that was all that was left when I started doing band.
Well, my dad is actually military, so
Hmm.
it kind of started. We were traveling all over the place, and at one point, you have to keep taking these tests, to kind of assess your level of what you could do. So I just from what I recall or how it was told to me, like, hey, she scored really, really high. She's really intelligent. She should play like an instrument such as like the violin, because the violin is a complex instrument. I mean, at least that's what I was told. That's how it came about. So then I started that instrument when I was around 7 years old. Around 7 years old, and I've had like some of the same teachers from that point on.
And then on top of that, you play what you play a few more instruments, I believe. You play the piano.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know you play the acoustic and the electric guitar,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one more. I can't remember.
It's the flute, and I do play other string instruments, but those are the main ones.
Oh
But
yeah.
primarily like classical flute, a little bit of like other styles of flute that you could play with flute. But my favorite is classical. From those, old eras, it's just like I just think the music is just beautiful. That where the flute is, has a certain style to it. Nothing wrong with jazz style, but I just prefer on the flute. I prefer classical.
Oh wow. Okay. So like whenever I started playing, um, and I just didn't have a knack for it. I played for a year. I said, man, I had a hard time understanding the notes, understanding the rhythms to it. But I guess being that you were a little bit more gifted with mathematics, because I think those able to do that and music kind of correlate a little bit.
I wouldn't say
And
that I'm more gifted. I think we're all gifted in different ways. Like you're an extremely gifted person. Like just your personality and your the qualities that you have. I haven't heard any of your writing, but read any of your writing, but just by looking at some of your questions, how you do things, you're very, very gifted. In fact, we're all very gifted. We're just gifted in different ways.
ways, yeah. Uh,
It's just the world or society. I think we think certain things are more gifted, but it's just the I guess how society positions it. But you're an extremely gifted person, and I'm definitely by far not more gifted than you by any means.
oh, that's true. We do have our gifts in each of us has our own gift, our God-given gifts, our talents, whatever you want to call it. Um, so yours, one of yours is math. How did you figure out that you were really gifted at doing math? I guess math, the formulas.
Well, that kind of also started too. When I was little, I joined my first competition in elementary school. So I don't know. It's just something that they just started putting me in competitions when I was little. And I remember my first competition, I was like in the third grade, and I competed against people in middle school. And that very first competition, I actually didn't get first place. I got second place. But most of the people that were in the competition were much older. They were like eighth graders, where I was like a third grader. And it was just one of those sorts of things. And then too, I don't know, maybe it's the whole high functioning autistic thing. I've always had a gift with numbers, and then just being able to translate and to be able to, I don't know, create a world. I can't quite describe it, but everything hangs off of being able to calculate things in numbers and see things in numbers.
Yeah, and that's another interesting thing about you. You were diagnosed with ASD. Is that? Can you explain what that is to those who don't know?
Sure. Well, I'm not the utmost expert on it, and I mention it to some people, but then I kind of feel like I don't want to label myself too much of that, but just to kind of let people know the background of it. But it's honestly, I probably wouldn't be able to describe it
Okay,
fully, but I know that it affects different people in different
different
ways.
ways. Yeah.
Um,
That-
but I would say on the positive side of it, I I've embraced a lot of different things, or a lot of self discovery about myself that I embraced, where it's something that I appreciate. But
no, that's
I don't know if I'd be able to best describe it in a way that is, I guess, digestible.
yeah. I got you. That's understandable. So, not only do you do you, not only do you do math, analytics, um, not only do you play musical instruments, but you're also an artist. which was another thing that I was like, wow, she's like, she does so many different things. Uh, I've seen some of your artwork. Uh, I could never do nothing like that. But again, it goes back to being each of us has our own talent. I mean, how did you figure out that as well? I mean, because uh, you know, I stick to writing, and I figured that writing was my thing, but I've never thought about trying my hand at different art and stuff like that. It's just beyond me, but that's for each person to figure out, right? I mean, so how did you first discover that you could do that? That you were at good at making recreating art or seeing whatever comes to your mind and putting it out on paper.
Well, I would say it's definitely not beyond you. You'd surprise yourself. I'm pretty sure, like, if you started drawing, it's all about, if it's what you want to do. But if it's what you wanted to do, it's definitely not beyond you for sure. You're more talented than what you think, and you probably have a lot of untapped talents. That's for sure. Well, a lot of people in my family are artists, but I started drawing. I guess I was still around the same time, like elementary school, and I just always enjoyed it. I would just always draw that. At that time, I had more, I guess, social challenges. I still have social challenges, but I just I always enjoyed drawing different things, and then I just kind of morphed into different things, and I primarily love like creature designs and monsters and just unique type of characters. I mean, I like the normal stuff, like I've done portrait drawings, but it's just so boring. Why not have like a third eye or a couple of arms, and or be half beast or half man or something, half bird. So yeah, that was just something I started early too. Just you know um, most of all of that started at a very early starting point.
Yeah, exactly. That's I kind of did the same thing with me with writing. I started doing that as a form of escape therapy, just trying to clear my mind of thoughts, stuff like that. I've been uh, essentially writing for since man probably since I was like 17. I started keeping journals, any ideas that I had, any thoughts that I had that came to mind, I would just jot them down. And I could never think to myself to just throw it away. I mean, I have like a couple file cabinets and I have a couple of boxes of just like tablets and books where I have so much ideas and thoughts, stuff that I write down so that I sometimes just to clear my mind. So it's amazing whenever I find somebody else and they find another that's their form of uh, expressing themselves. And gosh, that I've been trying that. I've been doing, like I said, I've been doing that for so long. I never thought that I would be able to make it into a career, try to do something with it, like writing a book. That thought never even crossed my mind. I didn't really seriously start thinking about anything like that until about 2 or 3 years ago. Uh, my friend, she's the one that said you should write a book. I always see you I always see you posting stuff. I always see you writing stuff. She goes, you seem to have a knack for it. And I can remember being in eighth grade, and my eighth grade English teacher says, hey, he told me to write. We were supposed to do an essay or a report, something like that. I couldn't remember what it was, but what we were supposed to be doing in the next 5 years. So I took it as a joke, and I wrote this big joke piece, about being homeless and traveling the world and doing all these other things. And I got up there, and it got a few laughs, but afterwards, he pulled me aside. He goes, hey, I'm going to fail you because you didn't take the assignment seriously, but I got to tell you, he goes, you're a pretty good storyteller. You're a pretty good writer. So I took that to heart, but I never, what does he know? I was thinking he's an eighth grade English teacher. So I just ignored it. But like I said, when I got older and I started realizing that that was a good way just to get my own thoughts out of my head and put them down on paper, and just sharing a lot of my own intimate details of my life into a book. It's funny to take one out and go back and read it and see your own words and see that how much you've changed as a person. It's one of the best things that I've been lucky enough to do. Oh, oh, sorry, it's muted again.
Sorry about
So
that.
that's okay. That's okay. So
Maybe it's the. Oh no, it's probably not that. It's probably not that. I have a screen protector thingy.
oh, that's okay. It's this thing's real sensitive. I'm figuring out. So whenever sometimes I can just touch a button and it'll mute or it'll take me out of the frame or it'll do different things. So uh, like I said, this is all new to me. The technical aspect of trying to figure out a broadcast, and then also learning how to become a trying to become a broadcaster. Because I see guys again, I see Russ do it, and he makes it look so easy. But of course, he's been doing it for years, and I guess I see some guys who do it who haven't been doing it very long, but they make it look pretty easy. So in between there, I said, you know what, if those guys can go out there and do it, I know I can. So that's the whole
Absolutely,
reason.
you're doing a great job. It looks good, and you're making it look easy too. It just doesn't seem like it probably from your perspective.
Yeah, and that's why again, one of the things that one of the other podcasters that I had been speaking with told me, he said, expect you're going to have a lot of problems early on because you're just learning to feel yourself around the camera. He goes, go back and evaluate yourself in about 20 episodes, 25 episodes in, and you'll see a big difference from when you first started. You start getting more comfortable with being behind the camera and working all the technical aspect of it. And hopefully, what I'm trying to do is my daughter is very interested in learning the technical part of doing stuff like this. So I'm trying to get her to train to handle everything for me. That way I can just that way I can just hop on, have a conversation, not have to worry about all this because she's pretty intelligent. She's on the Genius Bar at school, so whenever they have issues with the computers or technical stuff at school, they'll come pull her out of class. Go ask her.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so she's got a she's I'm figuring out that's sort of her gift. So she wants to create her own online gaming stream. So I told her, well, you want to go ahead and start? You can go ahead and help me out because some of this stuff I've figured out on my own, but she she has uh she has a little bit more. She's a little bit more knowledgeable about it than I am. She's like, hey, you need to get a different kind of mic, Dad. You need to get this. I said, okay. I don't. I was the one that she was the one that told me that they actually use like a professional microphone at school in her audio technical class. So that's why when I told her I was going to start doing this, her ears perked up, and she's like, oh wow, you're going to start doing that? I want to do that. I said, okay. Well, um, I've been I haven't been doing it too long, so I'm trying to get her to come in here and help me out whenever she gets a chance. But last week when I first started doing it, she had strep throat, so I didn't want to catch any of it. So I just told her, well, we'll have another chance, we'll have another opportunity to do that. So,
Yeah,
but
because that's one thing I think strep or anything goes around fast. So that was a wise move on your part because those things are hard to get rid of.
yes, I've
Yeah,
had
if
it
I see
once.
somebody coughing or something, like, yeah, it's okay, it's all right.
Well, you see all the news stories going on now about like the coronavirus and people just getting sick, and you wonder. It's like, man, you can look at the next person over, they have a cough, and you go, oh man, I don't know
Yeah,
where you
name it
where's
after a beer. Isn't a Corona like a beer?
yeah. Well, that too, but that's a different kind of corona. That's not the one that I think I think you could actually handle that virus. Uh, but
Yeah.
I've I when I want to start getting deeper into being, oh, how's the word I want to say? I slipped my mind, my train of thought just went away because I was thinking about now beer. I don't know why. Uh, no, so what I was, hold on, let me go back to my notes. Okay, here we go. So what I was trying to say is, whenever you decide that you want to start doing something and you throw yourself into it with, all your heart, all your passion, and you just want to go give it a shot, I I I wanted to know, or I want to start asking everybody whenever I interview them, what was what was the one thing, or what's the one thing that you're aiming for whenever you start, or whenever you take your first steps in your journey to trying to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. If there's, if there's one thing that's been influential, or what is the ultimate goal whenever your time is all said and done, because we all have to at some point going to have to face the fact that we're all going to leave this earth. So I'm trying to leave an imprint behind that, even if it doesn't mean anything to anybody else, that maybe my kids can go back and see it and say, hey, this is what my dad was doing. This was his attempt at trying to leave his legacy behind. So I guess that was the word I was looking for, and I couldn't think about it. I said, so what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind whenever everything's all said and done? Because I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were talking about this, and he said he he posed it in a way that made me really think, kind of shook me up a little bit. And he said, and I wish I should have wrote it down the way he posed it to me, because it really struck a chord with me. And I'm gonna have him on the show, and I'm gonna ask him that question when I do, because it was a really deep conversation that we had, because he's a real solid guy, and me and him started our journey at almost about the same time on LinkedIn. So uh, whenever we talk, we've he's probably one of the only people that I've talked to like maybe 5 or 6 times already. Just had regular conversations, and God, I
Absolutely.
just I just rambled on for so long.
Oh
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, it's perfectly fine. I do the same thing. It's a really good ramble because it gives everyone context as to the question, and I think that's wonderful because for people to understand like the reasons of why you asked the question. So I still think that's a great job. Well, honestly, I don't really know, but I think like you said, that's the point. It's so funny. It was this art project, and I was really, really struggling to do it because, just because you have these different talents doesn't mean you really want to use them every time somebody wants you to do it. Because there's so many different types of writing, like like I write too. Like I think that's my big dream is creating film because I'm a creative as far as telling stories. Because my art, like the creatures or the different art that I do, they all have a story. And, I've written poetry, stories. I've actually won a couple of awards for writing. And I would say just doing what I love to do and making an impact and not doing things just for money. Because maybe I'm crazy. I mean, different people have offered to pay me for different things, but it's just, you just don't really feel like, oh, I don't want to apply this talent to this. Like, it's not what it's for. Because it's not really being an artist, it's you expressing yourself towards something, so it's just like to do that and then to accept funds for it to me is kind of like prostitution in a way. So it's just like I don't really want to. I guess I want to do what I love to do, and have meaning to what I'm doing that's beyond making money out of it. I think money, you have to make a living, of course. I think that'll come, but I just think, like, if you're just jumping at everything just to make a dollar out of it, there's really no point in it. It's just, that's just the way it feels. It's like you're just doing something just because, and that's why I was saying, you know, earlier, to maybe to some people, that I don't really feel right. Like, it just feels like I don't do things for money. I that's not my primary motivation. And maybe that can cause someone to be a starving artist, but I believe eventually the money will come, like, if you stick with it. But if you're just letting 3,000 people pull you in all different directions, that want to use your talents, without even any care of your contribution to it. Because when you're drawing or you're playing music, it's more than just doing it. It's a part of yourself that's actually in it. So that's what I mean. Like, if I can get opportunities where I am an artist, and I'm compensated for it, that's fine. But if I can, more importantly, if I have an opportunity to make a mark and really do a great job at it, where I don't feel like I'm struggling internally, then that's even better. So I would say that's me rambling on, and that's my long-winded answer to, I don't want to
Yeah,
be prostituted, and I don't want to be used by
yeah.
people.
Hey, I totally understand, and I I feel the same way. It's not all about money. I think if you get involved in doing something like that just for the money, you're not. You might have success, but it's it's. I don't think you'll be. You'd find what you're looking for whenever it's all said and done. Because there's people that, I mean, there's famous actors, there's musicians, there's artists who go out there and they do it because that's their passion and they love it. And then there's some that do it for the money, and then you find out that, hey, that it's unfulfilling for them. You see people stories all the time of like people that overdose or hang
Mm,
themselves or do things that you wouldn't imagine, and you would figure, well, he looks like he's got everything that anybody could want. He's got money, he's got fame, he's got family, and it goes beyond reason, because I think at the end of the day, it's about wanting to feel fulfilled, wanting to have the ability to say that that's something that I'm proud of, because I write. I don't share everything that I write. I keep things that I want for myself, and if something comes out of me writing a book, then hey, that's great. But for me, it's about fulfilling a dream. Um, having a putting one of my accomplishments down and actually having it in my hands and having it something tangible that started out as an idea that I was able to transform into a book. You know, I again, I'm not shooting to become a bestseller. If I write a story that happens to become one, oh well, that's nice. But
mm,
that's not my whole purpose. My whole purpose is to write because I have a yearning for it. I sit down, and when I sit down and write, it it brings me joy. It brings me frustration. It brings me, you know, happy. It brings me happiness. It brings me anger sometimes, because you get frustrated at writing. But that's the thing about having a passion. You should feel all those emotions. And for some people, you know, they play an instrument because they can. They go and chase a career because they can, not because they want to. And
or
I've
oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was like, or sometimes people, they do want to be an artist, but it's hard, because then you mentally, you're like, you want to do something with your art, but then everybody else, they want to use your art for something else, so then you struggle between that. And then there's, making money and making a living, surviving, and stuff like that. So I think those people that are unhappy, that are artists, they want to do art, but maybe, there are other things in play where they don't really have as much control, over the
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. You see somebody like Prince. He spent I mean, he was such a creative person. He had all this music. He had all these wonderful things, but he kept all his stuff that he created on tight wraps. You never saw any of his music, any of his stuff licensed, none of that stuff until he actually passed away. You couldn't, I mean, you literally couldn't go on YouTube and find a video of his because
He
he
didn't want to
wanted
be
to.
a slave, and he had every opportunity. I think, I mean, just from reading about him, I didn't know a whole bunch about him, but just looking, researching him, and finding so much about him, I was like amazed. I think he's the same way. Like, he doesn't want to be a slave. I mean, he made it, from what I read, he made it to the top quickly, and he could continue to excel at that. But he just, he wanted to be an artist. He not a slave. So that's what I mean. Like, I think that's where people get that confused at. It's like, just because I'm an artist and I could do all this art, if you think it's great, you see the beauty and the creativity in it, it's because it's what I wanted to do. I could easily draw and replicate something, but it's not going to be as great if I feel like I'm forced, or it's just something that's just, that has no passion in it. It's no better than being a dog on a leash where you're just drawing a bunch of lines. That's not what art is, and I don't think people understand that.
Yeah, and I think uh, that's why I have a few friends who they could find a publisher, they could get published through a regular publishing house, but they prefer the freedom to do what they want when they want and create what they want because I've talked to a few other authors who have their books published through a publishing house, and then it's one of those things where they push them into forced creativity. They're like, "Hey, we need a book from you. We want to know when you can have, when do you think you can have this done?" They'll give you deadlines. Hey, we want a book out by 6 months. You know,
Hmm.
you're
Now
forcing.
that, oh, sorry.
No, well, I'm just saying that you're kind of forcing yourself into writing, where as opposed to self-publishing a book or doing it on your own, you're free to create when you want. You're free to publish when you want. I mean, if you got the means to do it, uh, you have all the control. You're not a slave to. A lot of these authors that I know, they're not making tons of money off of it. I mean, you can go buy some of these books on Amazon for you know $3.99. It's not about the bottom line. For a lot of them, it's about the creativity and getting their ideas and stories out there into the world.
Mm. Well, 3.99 is actually pretty good. Like the Chicken Soup for the Soul author, that's how he made his first set of money, because he sold it 25 cents each a book, and he did $100,000. So sometimes it's that thing. I know I write a lot about that sort of thing. Is that when something is higher in price, it doesn't mean that it's going to make a lot of money. In fact, majority of the population, affordability, they probably can only afford a certain amount. So actually, like, lower price items may actually make more money. But I was going to say, time wise, I don't mind the time frame. Like if someone says, oh, you have, you know I mean, realistic time frames. It's not like, oh, I want this done and it has to be done tomorrow. But if it's like, a good time frame, 3 6 months, I could do it easily because I could be creative on the whim. But it's just like, if it's something where I'm stifled, and if someone doesn't understand like the creative process, like, because I put a lot of passion to it. Like, even if I'm, let's just say I'm creating a character or a storyline for artwork, like I think about the story of the character first. I do a lot of research what the personality is, the flaws, the quirks about it. I think about the look, and then when I draw the look, I think about the different profile angles, deformities, whatever it is. And there's a lot that goes into it. And as some people, they just want like a finished product, but it's not that simple. There's so much to that character that I'm thinking about that maybe other people, they won't notice it. But it's kind of like, what was the artist? It was either Michelangelo or Leonardo da Vinci. I think it was Michelangelo. He had this painting that he did. He only wanted people to view it in a cave. He used this specific type of color that the lighting in that cave would be able, only the lighting in that cave would be able to show. Um, a lot of people don't think that that's crazy, but that's what art is about the detail, and only you can define, what that detail is. So it's not all about just popping up and start drawing stuff. Like, there's so much more to it. You're creating something, is being born by you, developing this, and you have to treat it with love and care. You can't just poof, just throw something out there like it's like some kind of, you know garbage thing. It's a life form, a form of a life. Sorry, I
Exactly.
didn't get like that. I recently went through something like that, so really, so I feel like, really like you could feel it in there.
I understand. I mean, it's the same thing when you draw out characters for a story. You want to kind of add depth to each one of your characters that only you know and understand. So whenever you're writing and hey, this person, this is going to be their quirk because this is the way I see it in my mind. I see that person. I'm making that person live, and I'm going to write it out that way. And that's about whenever you're creating like that, it feels so, how what's the word I'm trying to think of? It feels so liberating to be able to make something up in your mind and putting it out there and have people read it and understand it and resonate with it, because it's like you said, it's part of you. It's part of your soul. It's part of your soul bleeding out and onto the paper. And it's one of the things that I love whenever I read poetry. You can feel the emotion. It's almost like touching it. Um, my first guest that I had on, she was a poet, and I was reading some of her poetry, and man, want to talk about deep. Uh, you read it, and your mind just starts going, "Wow, that's God. What was she feeling that moment? What was in her mind at that moment? What angle was she thinking about when she created that? Because it's so, each word, each story, each line, when you put them all together, they all mean something that you wrote, how you felt in that moment. You'll never feel that way again. So when you get it on paper and you go back and you read it and you go, "Oh wow, that was crazy. That was a that was an amazing night," or "That was, man, I was really sad or depressed that day," or "Man, I really felt good that day." So I get it whenever you just can't sit down and go all willy nilly and start just typing and writing and hopefully something comes out of it. Um, you
It's
sit, yeah, it really is. It really is a process to try to sit down and write a. One of the hardest things that when I first started trying to figure out to write was trying to make sure I outlined the whole story, because I did try to write at first and just said, you know what, I can just sit down and write. This is fine. I've done it plenty of times. When I sit down and write a blog, I just come up with the general concept, and then I'll go ahead and structure it the any way I want to, and I'll write into it my emotion and feeling. So I said, well, I can do that when I write a story. Problem was, sometimes when I was writing the book, I didn't have an outline. So if I had a good thought or a good idea, and I said, this is the way I want the story to go, I would it slip away. I'd forget about it, and I had to go back from the drawing board and actually outline out my story, so at least I had some sort of path to lead me on whenever I got to a point where I either got frustrated or um, was tired or had, writer's block, and I just didn't feel creative, I could always go back and look at that outline and those notes that I had written down there and go back together and collect my thoughts and just hop back on there and go from there, because there would be days, I mean, there'd go weeks where I wouldn't write. I'd go back and I'd go, oh, I just didn't have it in me this day. I was struggling at the time trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and that was playing a big part into me struggling when I first started my journey into writing a book, because I'd done a little bit of um, screenplay writing. That's a little bit different. I don't know if you've ever done any screenwriting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a little bit different because you're not so pent on certain details as you would when you write like a story,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can put lot more idiosyncrasies in there about this person or how you describe the scene, everything else. So when you're writing a when you're when you're writing a screenplay, it's a little bit different because you're going to leave the you're figuring you're going to leave the story and the outline and how the design and everything is going to be left to the eyes of the director. You want to concentrate more on the dialogue and the character of your person. So when you're writing a book, though, you can actually go a little bit more in depth. You can write about those things, which what I found it enjoyable when I started doing it, because I was being too, like, again, I was being too broad in general because I had been used to writing more of a screenplay format, and learning to change my mind a little bit and learning how to outline and write a book was, I guess, was what was part of the learning process.
Absolutely.
So, ah, well, you know, I'm trying to figure out I'm trying to figure out how the best way to end these things. So I guess we can go ahead and wrap it up. Um, First, I want to just tell you thank you for hopping on with me this evening, taking the time out.
Absolutely.
I know what it's like, trying to
Anytime.
block down a little bit of time, but I'm glad you did, and I'm glad I'm doing this, and I know I will get better. It's just going to take a little bit more practice, like anything else.
Oh,
But
you will. You're more talented than what you think. You don't give yourself enough credit. That's for
you know,
sure.
I've heard that a lot. I've actually had you're like the probably like the sixth or seventh person that's told me that. Hey, give yourself a little bit more credit, man. You're doing it, and I think it's because I'm not used to hearing that I
Yeah,
know that I
you're
can.
natural with this sort of thing, with this whole podcast thing. Like I should be
So.
taking notes from you. So you're natural,
Oh
comfortable.
yeah, that's right. You
And
wanted
I
to.
know my body language is probably really going to be weird on because I just, I get kind of like tense a little bit. But you're natural and you're doing a great job. And I'm honored and grateful to have been on. And anytime you want me here as a guest, um, just let me know. And
Okay,
I'm definitely a
man.
supporter. I'm
Thank
definitely,
you.
I'm definitely in your corner.
Yes, let's do that. And then on top of that, I'm also planning to do just a regular podcast. So I was gonna just do a podcast at first, but because you can feel. I think I would feel a little bit more comfortable because then if you messed up a little bit or you wanted to change, it's almost like writing. If you wanted to change something or if you wanted to go back and edit it, you could, so that when everything's done, you have a more finished product. But I wanted to challenge myself. So that's why I said I wanted to start doing live streaming as well, because it's a little bit of a challenge trying to put everything together and then hopping on, and you can do all the research in the world and you can get everything together, but it's how you come across to the camera, to your guests, and everything else. So that's why I'm trying to get as many of these as possible, because I think the more I do it, it's just like when I first just like anything, when you learn how to ride a bike, the more and more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, your
So
intro was good. Like the way that, the whole introduction that you put together, the visuals, that's definitely on point. You came up with the questions, the promotional flyers, which my apologies. I did share the video. I was meaning to post the other thing, but today and yesterday was like a really crazy, hectic day.
hey,
And
that's okay.
I'm all over the place. So that
Nice.
was really good. I think you're doing a great job, and it's only going to get better. It's only going to get greater from here, and you're a natural at this.
Thank you, Samantha. I appreciate it. I really do. And again, I'm gonna when I start getting a little bit more and more comfortable, believe me, I'll have you on again. I'm compiling a list of people that I would like to have on for a second time. So you're one of them, and of course, my first guest, which she was a friend of mine. We grew up in the we grew up in the same town, and she became a poet of all things. She's really deeply entrenched in the in the poet society here in the metroplex where we live at. So um, I told her that I would go out and do. I told her I wanted to do public speaking. I wanted to get comfortable. That's the next challenge to do myself, is getting to get up and talk in front of people. So she invited me to one of her open poetry nights. So I told her I'd put it out there. So whenever that happens, I want to actually have it videoed so I can put it online and say, look, everybody, I actually went out there and read poetry. And I'm actually going to try to read some of my own that I've written. So that's going to be another, um, you know, thing to challenge myself. I'm trying to get, somebody told me you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. So that's what I'm trying to do.
That's so
It's,
true. Ooh,
it's,
that's so true.
yeah, it was actually with the conversation, somebody said, hey, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, man. So you feel nervous or you feel those butterflies. He goes, that's what it's like to live. That's what it feels like. You just need to realize that's what it is instead of fearing it. You need to learn how to run towards it. So, man, he gave me some good advice. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, you're doing a great job.
All right. Well, thank you again, Samantha. Um, just so you know, whenever this is done, I'm doing what Russ does. I download it off the video stream, and then I turn it into a regular podcast as well. So
Absolutely.
I'll shoot you that once it's done, and if you want to share it with somebody, I'll drop down in all the show notes all your links and everything else, so I can promote you properly, because I think you're a very talented mathematician, and I think there more people should be looking for somebody like you.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, I'll talk to you again soon, Samantha, and I'll go ahead and end it. I do have
Oh,
an outro this time, so this is something new that I'm trying. I didn't do this
oh,
before,
I can't
so
wait to see it.
all right. So
Well,
I'll
thank you
talk to
so
you again soon, and for everybody else watching, thank you for joining. You know what? I had comments on here. I didn't even look at them, but I feel sorry now. But there's a way
much.
that you can show comments on here. So check it out. So you can see comments from people who are actually watching.
Oh, awesome. Wow.
So I didn't. Man, I just totally forgot about it because I got so uh, involved in trying to do the interview. But I'll get better, folks. And Frank, hey,
Yes.
thank you, Frank, for hopping on. Frank's a really good guy. That guy's got two kids that he's one of those fathers that supports his children. He pushed them. They're very talented musicians, both of them. Uh, he's an incredible dude. We grew up together, so a lot of these people that I know, I don't know how I was able to connect with all these people, but a lot of the people that I grew up with, they're all, they all have a talent, they all have a passion, they all have something that they're chasing. So I'm just so glad to have people like that. And then when I find people like, people like you, I love to connect with those kind of people
Did you
because
go on LinkedIn Live yet? Like LinkedIn Live?
no,
Like,
I've been trying to. You have to apply. That's the process that they have. You have to
mhm.
apply to get LinkedIn Live. So I've applied twice and I haven't heard anything back. But
I applied twice too.
oh, have you? Have you
I
heard
did
anything? I haven't heard
not a
anything.
darn
So
thing. Not a
and
dime.
and each time I've done it, I've the first time I didn't have any kind of streams or anything like that. So this time that I filled it in, I said, well, do have a couple areas where I can stream now. I stream on Facebook, YouTube, I do it on Periscope. So it does stream to 3 different channels. So hopefully they'll be able to look at it, and I will get to do LinkedIn because I do have
Yeah.
a lot of people that follow me there as well, and there's a lot of people I've connected with. I would have loved to um, share the broadcast with.
I guess we just got to keep applying.
That's the only thing I can think about doing because I mean, there's people who, well, I've heard from a few guys who've applied and said, man, I've done it like 5 times already, and I haven't got through. It's just the luck of the draw, I guess. I don't know what it is because some of these guys have real big following numbers. I mean, they have like 50,000 followers, and they
That's
still,
I have a few things I noticed too. I think you have to have over 10,000 followers, which I just reached 10,000 followers. Because
yeah,
most of the people that I notice that have it, and I kid you not, they all have 10,000 or higher. So I just reached that mark. So I think maybe that's what it is,
mm,
because when you think about it data wise, if you don't have like, if you only have like 2,000 people, they have to tie in an algorithm because you get like notifications that people are, that they're live. So if you only have about 2,000 people and only a small percentage of them are usually online, they can factor all of that in with their algorithms. So I think that's why they probably created their model based on those who have 10,000 or higher. Because I haven't seen any person. I mean, I could be
no,
wrong. I could be
I haven't
totally
either.
wrong. But I've never seen a person with LinkedIn Live with less than 10,000 followers. In fact, they all have, the lowest I've seen was about 10,000, but everybody else is like 40,000, 60,000. So I honestly think that that's what it is.
Yeah, and that's same thing here. I haven't seen anybody that has any kind of low numbers, but I'm still surprised that some of these guys that do have, high numbers that have like 50,000 followers still aren't getting approved yet. So I
Well, I
guess
think
it's
that
just
is how active they are. So let's just say if, I think they have like some kind of scoring system. That's why they ask for the link. So they probably have like a scraper, or they
uh,
probably have like, a bot or whatever that's reading that sort of thing. I'm not sure how they configure their algorithm for that. But like if the person is not really that active, and then also they're probably looking for a certain type of content. So I wrote about stuff like that, about text sentiment analysis, so they could probably crawl through and see what are the generalized words or terms that people use, and they're probably looking for a certain kind of content. So but other than that, I mean, usually the people that have it, they're pretty active on LinkedIn. You can have a pretty huge following and it's not.
yeah, and that's something I still got a ways to go because I'm only at 2,000. So, but I haven't been doing it very long. I've only been really active on LinkedIn since December actually. So,
Well,
you
there are
know,
people that got that numbers in like 90 days or
wow.
60 days. So you just got to keep posting it and keep doing it. You'll get there.
Yeah.
And but this is my second time applying for it. But when I applied for it, I wasn't at 10,000 yet for my second time. So it may have to be an actual third
Yeah,
time.
you might
Yeah,
have to, maybe the third time's a charm.
maybe so.
So,
But
all right. Well,
well, this is good.
if you get on there, let me know and I'll hop on with you if you ever want.
Yeah,
I
you'll
would
be
love to.
first guest.
All
Actually,
right.
even though my channel is about data science and mathematics, I don't care. You're on my show.
There you go. We can just talk, right? I mean,
Exactly. I'd rather have
sometimes
a friend there first than like people I don't know. So even if you don't know anything about data science, doesn't matter. I don't care.
that's it.
I'm
There
gonna
we
have you
go.
as a guest.
There we go. Then we'll work all that out, and I'm pretty sure you'll get a stream before you know it. Um,
Absolutely. Well, this was good, and reach out anytime, and you know where to find me
that's right.
anytime. And I'm grateful for your friendship. I'm appreciative of you, and thank you so much for just being you.
All right. Well, everybody, again, thank you again for joining. Sorry for the little mishap with me not reading all your comments. I'll try to get better with that. I promise. I totally forgot that you can do that, and I didn't notice until I was about to end it and do the outro. So thanks again, Samantha, and thank everybody for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow night with my guest. Her name is Michelle Fernandez. She's an author. We've been friends for a while as well. She's actually got her second book coming out, so I thought I'd give her a shout out. We'll be on tomorrow at 7 o'clock. So everybody have a good night, and I'll talk to you soon.